also said, and he's absolutely right, the first thing he said was that Labour's policy was unworkable, and he's absolutely right.
Every day we come across new headlines about controversial policy decisions or calls for policy change. But what is public policy and how can it be studied?
There's a lot of different definitions of public policy. There's the classic definition is what government does or does not do. And that's a good definition because public policies consist both of the things we choose to do and the things we choose not to do. Just the other day in Switzerland, the voters in Switzerland in a referendum rejected a state-owned, state-managed healthcare plan in favor of their current private system, for example. That's a form of public policy. That's an affirmative decision to not do something else. So that's one of the definitions I like. The notion of public policy is that policies are usually purposive and goal-oriented. That means they're enacted for a reason, and the reason is to achieve certain social and political goals.
Policy is a field of study of what government does do and what government does not do. It involves aspects of politics and how people engage in various sorts of political behavior in shaping government agendas. It involves aspects of how policy changes over time and sometimes does not change at all. It involves how government implements public policy and the long-term impacts of those public policy in society. It involves aspects of just citizen engagement and why citizens somehow can influence government or may not influence government at all.
While public policy can be roughly defined as what government does or does not do, the study of public policy is concerned with the complex process from which a policy decision emerged. Theories help us to identify the most important factors that influence a policy process and the relationships between these variables. But theories are not just lenses that help us structure our research. Theories are also guides that help us define the scope of our inquiry and key concepts in a way that can be easily understood by other policy scholars who are testing and developing these assumptions. Theories can also be used as tools to inform policy decisions.
The emergence of multiple theories that we see today occurred especially in the 1980s and early 1990s with the emergence of the functional equilibrium theory, advocacy coalition framework, social construction and policy design, multiple streams, institutional analysis and development framework. Really altered how we thought about policy processes.
There are several different theoretical traditions in which I work in the policy process. There are three dominant ones today in the United States. The ones I work in are Paul Sabatier's advocacy coalition framework, which has been expanded on by other scholars, John Kingdon's streams metaphor, the multiple streams approach, and Baumgartner and Jones' punctuated equilibrium approach to the policy process. And all of them help us to understand how people, groups, institutions work to advance public policy and how things go on and off the agenda, and then ultimately the conditions under which policy can change. One area that the theories aren't as strong on as they could be is the notion of policy change. What are the predictors of policy change? And that's something all of us scholars are working on in the policy process tradition.
As we go forward, the field will have to deal with several important challenges. That includes how do we deal with not just the established theories, but new theories that offer different perspectives, and how do we kind of put those together in a single class or even in a research program? How do we deal with the globalization of the field where people are applying public policy theories and applying concepts, and sometimes in different ways. And sometimes those concepts were thought to be defined fairly clearly, but as we learn from other people applying them, that they may not be applied as consistently as we might imagine, and actually the interpretation of those concepts may be radically different. And this raises questions about how we go about doing our research to encourage the collective learning and the generation of knowledge that we hope to have about policy processes, and especially when people are applying sometimes the same theory and the same concept in radically different ways. We want to encourage adaptation. We want to encourage applying theories to achieve particular objectives and helping achieve whatever goals the researcher had in mind. But at the same time, we also want to develop the field as a whole. And so there's always a bit of tension between applying the theory to improve and understand a particular context, but also providing generalizable knowledge. And dealing with that, especially as we go forward, will be more of a challenge than ever before.
But the mainstream public policy journals are a good place to read and follow the trends. Students that are interested in studying the field can also join professional associations, such as the International Political Science Association, the American Political Science Association in the United States, which also has members from all over the world, and other organizations that exist to help scholars, and students are scholars, help scholars to understand the policy process. If you're a student in school at whatever level, you're part of a community of scholars, and so you need to think of yourself, if you want to advance in this field, as being engaged in the same enterprise as your professors. And we're all part of the discipline, and we all work together, and we learn from each other. So joining these groups, reading these journals, and communicating with authors is really important. And in fact, if you do have a question about an author's work, it's great to contact them by email. I very much enjoy hearing from the students that have read my book and have questions, and some of my colleagues have even caught errors in my book that I seek to correct in future editions. So this conversation needs to go on, and our networks, our organizations, and our journals and books are how we hold that conversation.
We still have to go a long way before we can confidently explain the policy process and change, but every generation of students and scholars adds new insights to the social enterprise that is the study of public policy.